Nithyanandam. My name is Nithyananda Swami, a disciple of His Holiness Paramahamsa Sri Nithyananda Swami and a sannyasi in the Nithyananda order. Thank you so much for joining me today and watching this video. In this video, I wanted to introduce a topic Swamiji introduced during the Nitya satsang a few days ago, which I will share along with this video. I wanted to talk about it because it was such an amazing breakthrough type of discourse where Swamiji just inspired you to look at the reality in the future that lays ahead for mankind. And before I introduce the video, or the satsang Swamiji talked about, I want to share an experience that happened to me about 3 years ago, where I was dealing with some kind of obstacle or problem in the work I was doing, and where I couldn't see, it was some like difficult thing. I don't even remember exactly what it was, but it was something which I felt like I didn't know how to do, or the solution, or something not many people knew about, something very like complicated. So I was sharing with one of my sister disciples on the phone. She was in India and I was here in Los Angeles, and I was talking to her, and Swamiji was sitting somewhere in the same area that she was, and he caught wind of the conversation, and he just said, "Tell her to Google it." And I could actually hear that through the phone, and I was like a little bit shocked that here's Swamiji like saying something like that, and just that was the solution, because anything that Swamiji says is not casual. It's always has a spiritual context, and it's directly for the ears that heard it, and it's directly for that individual's growth. So immediately after that phone call ended, I Googled and I got the answer to whatever I was looking for, and I use Google a lot for my work. And just like everyone else, everyone is using Google to find answers to questions, to get information, to find more information on topics they may already know about. Google is a resource for all of us. But what I didn't understand at the time was that how big the advent of Google was or is for humanity. See, there's been different breakthroughs throughout the course of time. Even something as small as a calculator. Once the calculator was developed, it really made some of the ways we memorize, math, multiplication, division, all those things totally redundant. And we saw that, as we're in school. Now with the computers, laptops, all those things also make all these traditional ways of learning redundant. But Google has done it in such a big way. Unknowingly or knowingly, Google has just made information so accessible to everyone who has access to the internet. You could literally learn a language, you can learn how to make a bomb, you can learn how to teach a topic, learn a topic, you can learn how to do hair. There's so many, everything you want to know is on Google. So what does that mean? What is the actual impact of that on society and on humanity? Well, what Swamiji introduced, one of the main impacts is that there is really no need for traditional education as we know it. And traditional education places a huge emphasis on memorization. From my experience growing up in the US and going to school here, memorization was a big part of the quote-unquote learning. And if you could memorize, you could do well in school. If you couldn't memorize, it would be a struggle. And even test taking wasn't about learning topics or really understanding information. It was about memorizing the answers to certain types of questions, understanding how the test maker thinks and memorizing that and then applying it at test time. The goal was just to pass the test and make it through to the next level. And one thing I can say for sure is in college, although I loved my college experience as far as having fun, meeting people, all those things, I found it to be totally useless. Like, after all the jobs I took after going to undergrad, and I went to a good school, there was nothing really that I applied from those 4 years to my actual jobs. Everything I learned in my actual jobs was literally learning on the fly, learning through my managers, learning through the co-workers, just figuring it out. And I know that's how most people learn. There may be some specialties where it was important to learn it in school, but even those specialties, the information part can be learned through Google, can be learned online. The actual experience is when you go do your internships, when you go do your residency, when you shadow someone. That's the experience that actually helps someone. And that's not something you actually learn in the classroom or in the traditional school. That's again on the job training. So before Google, this was the best way to learn. But now with Google, the emphasis and requirement to memorize becomes obsolete. Why should any of us memorize anything if we can get it at our fingertips? See, the whole purpose of memorization is so that we can regurgitate it when needed. But if I can get the same information and apply it when needed, then I don't need to memorize it. I can use this brain for other things. I can use this brain to contemplate, to internalize, to go deep into whatever the truths are in the learnings. And this is what we teach at our Nithyananda Gurukul in the Bangalore Adinam. This is how the kids learn. They don't waste time memorizing anything. Whatever can be found on the internet, they find, and then they look into it, they research it, they produce papers, they produce their own understandings, and that's how the learning happens. It's not something that's pushed down through memorization. And this is how learning should be for everyone. It takes the load and stress that we go through with memorizing something, removes it entirely, and places the emphasis on learning something, exploring, discovering. And this is the way education should be now. Before Google, okay, fine. But now Google is a tool to make this kind of education a reality. And it's already happening in the Nithyananda Gurukul. If you have a kid under the age of 18 and you're struggling, or that child is struggling, or you agree with what I'm saying now and what Swamiji has shared, or if you're a kid and you grew up in these kind of Western lifestyles, you know what you face in the schools, and the kinds of pressures your parents wouldn't even ever have any clue about. I really encourage you to think about alternative education. And I use that word alternative just because that's what most people would think a Gurukul is. But a Gurukul system is the original way to learn, from a guru to disciple method of learning. So it is the most ancient and the best way of learning. I would highly consider you look into it. I'll provide information about the Gurukul in this video link, and I'll maybe provide some other videos which will help you connect to the Gurukul. But it's high time we stop and question and rethink what we mean by education, and stop forcing our kids to go through this really painful process which actually traumatizes them. It's not just that you go through the education system and you don't have to and you drop it after college or after whatever, high school, grade school, everything. The pressure to memorize it stays with the person long after they pass through school. And it dictates how the decisions they make, the responsibilities they take on, how they feel about themselves, whether they think they're a failure, how much they think they're capable of doing. Just because they couldn't memorize some times table, or they got called on in the class when they didn't know something. It's really unfortunate that this pressure that the education system puts on our kids has such a damning effect on them later in life. So it's not even required anymore. Before there weren't options. That's the whole point. The point of this video is to remind ourselves of the possibility out there, that we don't have to keep doing this over and over again. Just because you went to a traditional education system, don't force your kids to go. Look into other options like the Gurukul. It'll be the best decision of your life. Best decision you can make for your kids. So thank you so much for allowing me to share this, and I hope that it brought some insight into a topic that maybe you were already thinking about or hadn't maybe quite yet explored. So I'll connect some links through this video and invite any comments or feedback. So thank you again so much, and Nithyanandam.